Okay, we have the front brake caliper here on the electric scooter, and I'm going to show the full adjustment on it once we've got it installed. So earlier we put on the mounting bracket, that's completely secure, but the caliper adjustment itself is still loose. That's these two top and bottom screws here. So I'm going to show you a loose caliper here, but essentially you're going to have these two pads here, which when you pull the armature, it squeezes the pads in between the rotor. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put a little bit out of adjustment to help us later. So there is a adjustment screw which is here on this caliper, but on the back side of the mounted caliper. We're actually going to screw that in. I'm going to do about 3 turns, but we want that to press against the rotor to start. So I'm going to do 1 revolution, 2, 3, and now it's touching the rotor completely. So right now this one's loose, so I'm going to loosen this up just to make sure. But I have the backside pad completely against the rotor. And what we're going to do, now you don't want it to have it extremely tight, just enough to touch it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull the armature of the front until it's tight and then come off just a little bit and then tighten that. So what we're trying to do here is I'm going to squeeze the brake handle above, and it's going to take this whole caliper and basically line it up on top of this rotor flush. Top and bottom will be perfectly flat on the rotor while doing this. So while I squeeze the brake, this kind of moves just a little bit to make everything flat on the rotor. So while I'm continuing to hold the brake, I'm going to take these adjustment screws and I'm squeezing pretty hard. I'm going to tighten these in place. And that's going to get our caliper flush with the rotor, so that way either the top or the bottom of the brake's not pulling harder than another. So once those are tight, then you can release the brake above, and then it's still going to be hitting the rotor. So now we go to the back side, and then we just release that inner pad up until it's not touching the rotor anymore. So now I've got it just enough, not touching the rotor, and now we'll adjust the actual armature here. And then typically when I do it, I'll pull it so it touches the rotor, it's tight, and then I'll back off maybe a 1/2 inch or so and tighten it up. And then above, I'll double check and squeeze, but I'll show you what I'm looking at here. So we want the arm, when you squeeze, you don't want it to come all the way to the handle. So when you squeeze, it shouldn't make contact until about halfway. So this can be a preference setting, but I usually will do it so full brake is there. You never really want it to touch the handle on full brake. So while I'm doing this, it's pulling. So I'll show the caliper here on the ground again. Everything's loose. And then when you pull, not moving anymore. So perfect. That's what you need to have it at.